The Ideas Exchange, in association with HSBC.
Business minds are shaping the modern world. They've revolutionized our lives with technological innovation. They forge new relationships between entire continents. Their decisions affect what we do, how we work, where we live. In the Ideas Exchange, top executives travel the world to question one another.
Because we don't want to kill them.
They come head to head to reveal their strategies for success and the challenges they face.
Sometimes I just wish that we would be half the size with half the money.
Yogesh Mehta is the largest distributor of chemicals in the Middle East.
What we did is we made it almost impossible for our competition to really compete with us. We made it very difficult for them.
Yogi was virtually penniless when he moved to Dubai in 1990, after a business in his native India failed. 8 years later, he and a business partner built this chemical distribution terminal for $33 million.
Dubai is a land of opportunity. It's now today a veritable melting pot of people from all over the place. It's new, it is developing, and it is hungry.
Yogi's company, Petrochem Middle East, was hit badly during the global recession, but he recouped his losses and is currently aiming to achieve a turnover of $3 billion by 2017. Yogi is on his way to the UK to meet a British entrepreneur who set up his first business while still at school.
I believe that his story is very, very similar to mine. His success, his failures, his glory. I know we come from different worlds. I'm so looking forward to seeing him.
Nick Wheeler runs Charles Tyrwhitt, a quintessentially British men's clothing company.
It doesn't matter whether you're the biggest company in the world or the smallest corner shop in the world. You have to think about it as being one customer at a time.
Its flagship store is located on Jermyn Street in London, which is famed for its exclusive gentlemen's outfitters. Nick first cut his teeth as an entrepreneur while still at school.
I've never really been one for doing huge amounts of market research and really thinking through things properly. I think of something, I think it's a good idea, and I just go for it.
His company, Charles Tyrwhitt, has been through some tough times, but has done well in the recession and is currently expanding. So what can a British shirt maker learn from a chemicals trader based in Dubai?
I love meeting other entrepreneurs. And I think one of the issues we have in this country, in Britain, is that there aren't that many entrepreneurs. It's not a sort of thing that people do. And I think what Yogi has done in Dubai and around the world, he is a proper entrepreneur.
Yogi,
Hey!
how'd you do? Very
What a
nice to meet
pleasure.
you. Good.
To see you.
Let's go through here.
Lovely. Nick, you decided at an early age to work for yourself. Why did that happen? Why did you want to work at an age when you should have been at school?
One of my earliest memories, my father worked for a big agricultural industrial business, and he used to make agricultural machinery. And I used to go in to work with him when I was about 6, and I used to open the post for him. And I remember whenever there was a cheque in the post, I'd pull it out and I'd call him over, and depending on how big it was, and we'd both sort of do a bit of a whoop and have a dance around the room. It was just very exciting.
Yeah.
I wanted to leave school and not go to university, and everyone said, don't be ridiculous, get an education.
And it was quite an education. He went to Eton College, one of the UK's leading private schools, where he was a contemporary of British Prime Minister David Cameron. While not particularly enthusiastic academically, Nick started his first business there, taking photographs of school friends. To get his films processed at a good price, he needed to be mobile.
I bought my Morris Minor, and I kept it in Windsor, which I wasn't really allowed to do. I would take people's photograph, drive up to London, get sort of 20 or 30 sets of 250 photographs, drive back again. And it worked quite well, and made a bit of pocket money.
Nick still drives the Morris Minor he bought when he was 17.
I mean, it used to break down pretty much every journey. People were not keen to come for a ride with me. Many, many times I broke down on the M4, which was actually not such a bad thing, because it meant I could get the AA I could only spend about £1 on petrol, get the AA to take me the rest of the way. So it took slightly longer, but it was quite a good way to get around.
Before university, Nick went to India, where he got the idea for a made-to-measure shoe business after buying a pair while travelling.
I traced around people's feet and I faxed them off to India. Now, fax machines have gone now for good reason. They were pretty useless, and Indian phone lines back in the 80s were not very good. So the shoe would go in this size at my end, and by the time it came out the other end, it was sort of like this or like this. And I remember when the delivery arrived, I had 50 orders, 50 pairs. And I think it was basically 50 pairs for pixies and clowns, but not for the people who wanted them. So it was a complete disaster. And that's when I thought, well, why don't I do shirts?
You seem to be a man in a hurry to fail rather than succeed.
It's interesting you say I'm a man in a hurry, actually, because I always think of entrepreneurs fall into two camps. Yeah. You get hares and you get tortoises. You get the hares who want to build a business really fast. They build it, they sell it, they want to go on to the next thing. So actually I think of myself as not being in a hurry at all. And I think that's advantageous as an entrepreneur. When you control the business yourself and you have the shares yourself, you can decide at what pace you go.
Nick started his shirt business, Charles Tyrwhitt, in 1986. He'd inherited some money, but increased his capital with a calculated investment in a classic car.
I borrowed £17,000 from the bank manager to add to the £8,000 my great aunt had left me, and bought this Aston Martin DB1 for £25,000. And everyone thought I was nuts. The market was very buoyant, and I thought I could get in and get out and make some money. The Aston Martin I bought for £25,000, and a year later I sold for £100,000.
Nick fitted the running of his shirt business around his university lectures.
People just thought I was mad, actually. I shared a flat with some friends, and I had a lot of shirt boxes. They used to go out every night and get absolutely plastered, and I'd quite often sit in on my computer tapping in names and addresses.
So Nick, as you started marketing the Charles Tyrwhitt shirts, what did you do in terms of branding?
So I decided pretty early on that everything we sold would have the Charles Tyrwhitt label on.
My middle names are Charles Tyrwhitt. Tyrwhitt is an old family name. And so I thought, Charles Tyrwhitt, that sounds good. Good old British shirts.
Getting Charles Tyrwhitt to the point where it sells $170 million worth of goods a year has been a rocky ride. In 1994, the company went into receivership after dabbling in children's wear.
I have this rather annoying habit of making mistakes. Now, we were a mail-order men's shirt business, and we completely went off the rails and bought this business. And it was an absolute unmitigated disaster. The lesson that I learned from that was that you really need to focus.
We lost more money in 3 months than we'd made in the previous 3 years.
The receiver came in, we got thrown out of the building, and we went round the corner to the local pub. And then suddenly I just burst into tears. It's all rather embarrassing, actually. And I realised it really did matter to me. And I went home and I thought, this is ridiculous. You know, this business is going to be a great business. It's about positive thinking. You have to dust it off and start again.
Nick managed to salvage the business and got it back on track by focusing on its original successful formula: smart clothes for men at work. He uses the Britishness of his brand to sell it in overseas markets. Charles Tyrwhitt has 4 stores in the US, 1 in France, and 14 in the UK.
We don't want to be on every street corner. We don't want to be a sort of mass market company that you see everywhere. We want to be special. We trade very heavily on being Jermyn Street. People recognise Jermyn Street, Piccadilly, London, being the centre of shirt-making excellence.
Mail order and the internet account for 70% of the company's global sales.
Bonjour, Charles Tyrwhitt, à de l'appareil. Quoi puis-je vous aider?
The double XL would be the largest we have in stock for that at the moment.
Guten Tag, Kilifa von Charles Tyrwhitt. Danke für die Wartezeit.
How has the internet transformed your business?
I started a mail order business, catalogues in the post, And along came the internet. And the internet is just an absolute godsend for a mail order business. One of the great things about shirts, actually, is that they're compact. You know, we have a warehouse in Milton Keynes. Everything is sent all over the world, 148 different countries, in boxes that are, you know, this size of a shirt. And the internet completely opens up that global market for us. And we see growth in extraordinary countries where we're doing no marketing. And it's just sales that are coming to us because people have found us online.
But despite doing the business on internet, you've also decided to open shops in different parts of the world, especially in the States. Real estate is very, very expensive, and the internet model is obviously more competitive.
Some people will not buy a shirt unless they've seen it. But once they've seen it, they'll buy it, and then they're happy to buy online. It's about getting that customer in and then buying shirts for the rest of their lives.
On the company website, Nick invites customers to write to him directly.
You know, the real problem arises in businesses when people start to believe that they're too big and too important to deal with the end customer. You know, my picture is in the brochures. You are buying the shirt from me. It's not some faceless company. When you've got over 1 million customers, things do go wrong. But sometimes things go wrong not just once or twice, but they're going wrong a lot. And when we've got customers writing to you, you really get a feel for that. So, you know, what you do is you act on it.
Some of your casual shirts, and I find I just don't wear them because
they're too full.
Yeah, they're too full. So
I think that you learned a lot from your mistakes. Can you tell me something about how you manage your people and the company?
I want the people who work in the business to love Charles Tyrwhitt. You go on this little sort of journey as a tortoise. One day you suddenly get somebody in who answers the phone for you, takes the orders. And within about a week, they're doing it much better than you ever did. I have a meeting about once a month, everyone who started in the last month. And I sit them down and I just talk about the business. And I talk about the history of the business. But my key message to them is, whenever you have to make a decision, I want you to think, if this was my business, what would I do?
Although he now employs 550 people, Nick still makes the effort to remember everyone's birthday.
I don't just write, "Dear John, happy birthday, Nick." I'll write a little bit about them. A little bit about what they're doing and well done. If they've done something great recently, I'll just sort of mention it. The business is about the people. You know, no company succeeds with one guy. And I want the suppliers to love Charles Tyrwhitt. A lot of businesses don't get that. They see the suppliers as being people who they need to beat down on price and get the best deal. We want to work really closely with our suppliers. We want to make sure that when we need something, they give it to us rather than any of their other different customers.
While some of Nick's suppliers are based in Britain, other goods are sourced from countries such as China, India, Italy and Turkey.
So the Egyptian cotton product is just extremely soft.
But however big Charles Tyrwhitt becomes, Nick plans to keep all the management operations in the UK.
As the business grows, there's no reason why we can't just carry on having everybody under one roof. I love the whole thing of, if you have a problem, you can get everybody into the room, you know, you're all in one place, and you can say it how it is. I mean, I like the white. I mean, there's a lot of white on here, which just makes it look not too heavy.
Nick has turned the recession to his advantage, moving his flagship Jermyn Street store to a vacant shop twice the size a few doors down the road.
Has this recession affected your business in any way?
I don't think it matters what's going on in the economy. You know, for as long as I'm going to live, I think people will carry on wearing clothes. The really important thing for us is being good value. Maybe people don't want to go out and buy a new car for £10,000 or £20,000, but 4 new shirts for £100, that makes you feel good.
I see that you're very intense and passionate about your brand and about your company. Do you think that you will own this company all your life?
You know, I started the business when I was at university in 1986. You know, I tell my wife I would far rather sell any one of those other 4 children than my eldest child, which does wind her up. She gets very cross with me. The problem is I love the business. People say you shouldn't get emotionally attached to a business, but it's just rubbish. I love the business. This is my life. It's sort of just something I love doing. I've always loved it every day.
But for a price, would you sell the company? Everything has a price.
Why sell the business? And what would I do? How would it change my life? I think all it would do is it would give me a rather bereft feeling of not having this oldest child that I love very much.
Chemicals tycoon Yogesh Mehta has come to the UK to meet British gentleman's outfitter Nick Wheeler. We've heard from Nick. Now he is going to quiz Yogi about how he pulled himself up after the collapse of a business and became the biggest distributor of chemicals in the Middle East.
So Yogi, I've been stuck in England all my life. You've had a much more exciting time. You grew up in India.
Yes.
Why did you decide to go to Dubai?
Well, Dubai just happened to be the place. I was in the last stages of my financial ruin. When I thought of coming to Dubai, my friend came to Bombay, where I was living in absolute poverty. And he said, "What's happened to you?" I said, "Well, I don't have any money."
It was the late 1980s, and Yogi was reeling from a spectacular business failure in his native Mumbai.
I was inexperienced and I had no idea how to make money. I was selling chemicals to companies who paid me in 6 months and 7 months. I was buying chemicals from companies where I had to pay in a month and 2 months, for which I required a cash flow. I didn't have cash flow because I was spending what I earned. It came to a point where the electricity in my house was cut off.
Things got so desperate that Yogi had to take the drastic action of selling his wife's wedding jewellery.
When I decided that there was no other recourse but to sell the jewelry of the house, my wife was devastated. These were very, very personal, sentimental items. I wanted them so that I could pay bills. So it was either having that jewelry in the cupboard or having food in the stomach. I was always sleepless and worried sick as to what I would do. There are times that you think, shall I end my life? The only thing that kept me was my sense of confidence and conviction and belief in myself.
Yogi's friend persuaded him to try his luck in Dubai. He arrived there in spring 1990.
I was sleeping on the floor of my friend's house. He was not a rich man, he was a big-hearted man. I had to find money for myself. But he gave me an opportunity and he gave me 4 walls. Having failed miserably back in India, I did not want to fail again. So I said, let's start in the beginning, as in know the market, know the buyer, know the seller. At that point, I was then looking for a financier. And 4 months later, I did find a company with deep pockets who wanted to invest in chemicals.
How long was that between arriving and actually starting the business?
That was less than 5 months.
That's amazing.
Yes.
And did it take off from day one? Were you off and running?
Well, I started in June 1990, and in August 1990 we had the Gulf War. And in the war, people lose money and people make money. We were making money, mainly because we didn't panic and we imported a lot of chemicals at that point. And the war lasted only 6 months, as you know. But in that time, we established ourselves by bringing in a lot of chemicals and growing the business. Of course, the margins were huge because nobody else was importing. So we got in at the right time and we made some money very quickly.
In 1994, Yogi wanted to start a new venture. To get funding from the banks, he teamed up with a well-established businessman from the UK to form Petrochem Middle East. The two had ambitious plans to build a chemical distribution terminal at Jebel Ali Port in Dubai at a cost of $33 million.
How do you do a large tank terminal with very little money?
At first, you need to dream, and then you go about trying to make that dream come true. And, money was obviously a huge problem, but the banks were quite forthcoming and they were very supportive. The business from day one almost always made money. So as months became a year and a half, we had a solid business case which we presented to the bank to make that tank terminal.
The terminal gives the company a huge advantage over competitors. It enables it to hold large stocks of chemicals and to supply customers in the region with a wide range of products at short notice.
We buy chemicals from all parts of the world. We store it in our tanks in Dubai, and we then sell it to the paint companies or the printing companies, the packaging companies. We sell chemicals from Dubai to 27 countries on a daily basis. We built the chemical terminal in 3 phases over a period of 4 years. By the time we were done with it, we had actually a business plan that others in our competition would take years to copy, and we were then first in the line. So we grew, and we almost actually succeeded from the first month. And I remember traveling at least 20 countries a year. I was like a zombie, completely fired up to succeed. I had that energy of youth and the energy of success at that time.
By 2007, Petrochem Middle East's annual growth was running at 18%, but the company lost a lot of money in the global recession a year later.
We had a real estate business which went bust. It was very fashionable in 2008 to have a real estate business in Dubai because there was the boom. Absolutely. And we thought that why should we be left behind? Also, the chemical business took a hit because the chemical prices came down. So we went back to the drawing board and decided that we don't want to take those risks in the real estate business. We closed it down and we went full force into the chemical business because that's our strength. That's something that we do best. Focus. And that's very important, that stick to the core. Do what you know best. Don't go into spin-offs. You may pay a huge price, as we did for that.
With huge losses to recoup, Yogi went on a bold spending spree in his core business.
The chemical prices were so low that I thought that they couldn't get any lower. We invested in large stocks, thinking that the prices would move up, and we bought very wisely. And those chemicals that I bought at that time became more and more profitable for us. In 9 months, we had made the losses and we were up and running. So from the failure to the success, it was only a few months.
Yogi holds a firm belief that luck plays a big part in business success.
You enter the market at the right time and you can be lucky. If you want to win a lottery, you've got to buy a ticket. So you actually have to work towards making your luck.
In this instance, Yogi was extremely lucky. Having recouped the money he lost, he is now able to enjoy the finer things in life. He even has a nightclub in the basement of his house.
I've worked very hard, and I think that I've always balanced that by good living. For me, a day is not complete if I have not had the me time. For 1 hour, I do what I love the best, and I call that happy hours to Yogi. I developed a keen interest in wine tasting. I collect wine with a passion, but I also drink wine and share that wine. I actually love them fast cars, and I love the luxury car. I love this Bentley, and I feel very good when I'm sitting on it, almost kingly. Good cars make you feel that life has got so many things to offer. The Maserati has come at a later age in my life. It is almost an aphrodisiac to me. Right, good afternoon, folks.
Yogi runs Petrochem Middle East with offices all over the world. This is very different from the way Nick's company is run from the UK.
The markets are not as good as we thought they would be in 2012. So we need to prepare for 2013.
I mean, the business is pretty global. You've got offices all over the place. I've always liked the idea of having everybody in one place, so it's one sort of happy family. How do you manage to deal with that, having offices and people all over the world?
Well, Petrochem has offices all over, including in Singapore, China, Antwerp, London, Egypt. And I tell you, it's very difficult because the cultures don't match many times, and aspirations are difficult to manage. Sometimes I feel that we need more senior people, more leaders, and good talent to manage it. Otherwise, it can be very overwhelming.
When you've got people all over the place, you can't do face-to-face, can you? Because you can't be everywhere all the time. So it comes down to having a fantastic team of people. Yeah. Do you feel like you have that team of people, and can you leave it to them?
I quite find myself very challenged at this time to run a large empire, and I feel defeated many times. But there are certain people in the company who are absolute gems, people who believe and love the company and are natural-born leaders. Sometimes I just wish that we would be half the size with half the money.
So why don't you shrink it?
Well, there is a thinking right now to shrink the company. There's a thinking to get enough talent, new talent.
Yogi is currently in the process of restructuring Petrochem Middle East.
Tell them what's going on. Why did we let this guy go? Basically, the message is that you shape in or you shape out.
Due to the recession and disruption caused by the Arab Spring, the chemicals industry is going through tough times. Demand is down and profits are squeezed.
We have sort of grown lax and complacent, and we need to come out of our lethargy because of the heavy competition and the low margin that we see. We are doing many things to create a lean and mean environment. Today, I'm young enough, but tomorrow, if I run out of ideas, even I need to leave. Successful companies need fresh talent, bold ideas, and young blood.
So what happens over the next 10 years?
Well, I think baby steps, step at a time. 10 years' time, I might think floating our stocks in the market, something like that.
Why do you want to do that?
We want to taste some of the money which is invested. Most of our investments are in the company. And as we grow older, I think I'd like to have some money in the bank where I can write checks.
Yogi, that was fantastic, amazingly interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What a wonderful time we had.
After making some serious mistakes by trying to move into new business sectors, Yogi and Nick have both come to the conclusion that it's better to concentrate on their core strengths.
We had a lot to talk about, good ideas to exchange. Wonderful.
The fascinating thing for me was the fact that we're so similar. You know, we've had these sort of checkered histories, really, ups and downs, but just carried on.
The Ideas Exchange, in association with HSBC.